It's the waiver wire. Let's look at added, dropped players, guys to consider, guys that we should turf, guys that maybe we should give the old jack to. Michael Bolton?
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NBA fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd, and last Christmas I gave you my gyat. I'm also the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com, and you can find me on Blue Sky at joshloyd.bsky.social, on Twitter at redrock_bball, on TikTok at redrock_bball, and on Instagram at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Start the season with a big return on FanDuel. Get $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Go to FanDuel.com to get started. Also, check out LockedOnDaily.com and find the best newsletter for your favorite NBA team. Sign up at LockedOnDaily.com. I hope none of you clowns decide that you want to comment or thumb up this video. I don't want it. Keep it to yourself. Do not do it, and absolutely do not double bang. It would be one of the worst things you could do for me, so don't do that. Waiver wire. Let's talk about it. No games on today, obviously, but we've got a monster, in fact, 13-game day coming up tomorrow. Just a little bit of a day to reset, get your lineups in order, work out what you're doing for the rest of the week, maybe work on some trades, maybe don't cry that you're all down the bottom of the standings and send out terrible trades because you're giving up and try and ruin a league. That wouldn't be very cool, wouldn't be very chill, in fact, so maybe don't do that. Let's talk about where things have been heading across on the waiver wire at the moment, getting a bit of a temperature for the fantasy basketball landscape. The most added player over the last 48 hours is the number one man in Detroit. Well, he's not really the number one man, but he is the most added player. It is Ausar Thompson. And again, we know that fantasy managers are reactive. We know this. I'm not saying that Ausar Thompson's a bad ad. It's totally okay. We love getting out ahead of stuff. That's part of our raison d'etre, which is one of the best phrases of all time. We like to do that, but we also have to understand the limitations of these sort of moves. I'm not saying, again, Ausar can be great, but it did take Tobias Harris being out, and it did take Jaden Ivey being out for Ausar to play those minutes, largely Harris being out, and we had seen Asar's minutes actually moving down prior to that last game. So it's not like that it was just a ramp up, because he was ramping down before this game. No problem if you want to add him. I don't know how long Tobias is going to be out. That is what we do. We add, we stream, we try it out, and then we move on later on when it goes back to nothing, which is what I think will end up happening. But that's okay. The second most added player there for about the fourth show in a row is Justin Champagnie. Continues to play really well. He is a two-way player. At some point, they'll either have to convert him or he'll stop playing. But also, again, there are three players that play his position currently out. It's great at the moment what we're getting from Champagnie. We love that. It's hard to know with these sort of things because we don't know how long Kismet, George, or Kuzma are going to be out. They all could have missed literally one game. Champagnie could have got one start and then been a waste. That's true. But it hasn't. It's been multiple games now. So people are adding Champagnie, understandably. I do not think that this is a long-term thing where he's producing at this value or getting these minutes. Maybe when we hit March the 10th, he's doing it. That's possible as well. But it seems pretty unlikely to me that those three guys would come back and Champagnie's playing 34 minutes a night. In fact, it seems, look, let's be fair, actually impossible. Like, that's just not going to happen. But they're not there, so do it. And then Ben Simmons is the third most added player. And is it because Dennis Schroeder's traded? Yeah, it is, obviously. But the thing that tipped it over the edge to me was the fact that he played 31 minutes. If he was playing 23 minutes, you'd go, what am I going to bother with this for? Because we know he's going to sit out games, right? We know he's going to miss some time with injury, and we know that he's going to sit back-to-backs, and that's true. But if he's getting 31 minutes a night, well, can you get top 70 value maybe? Top 80 value in the games that he plays? And that absolutely is a must-roster player. In fact, out of those names there, Ausar Thompson, Justin Champagnie, and Ben Simmons, Simmons is the guy I would add because the path to seeing how that lasts long-term is very clear. The others, it's like, these are injuries that might literally last one more game. They might not, but they might. Whereas with Simmons, it's like we're waiting until he gets hurt now. Andre Drummond is one of the most added players on Yahoo. He was pretty good in the last time that the Sixers played without Joel Embiid. We have seen Andre Drummond play without Joel Embiid this season, and let's be frank, he wasn't good enough to be held on rosters. But they are going back, and self-branded hat legend Nick Nurse has moved from Drummond to Yabusele, and now he's back to Drummond. So again, short-term stream, no problem. Russell Westbrook, also one of the most added players. That is a clear chase, very clearly. Christian Brown was out last game. Westbrook started. Westbrook played well when Jamal Murray was out. True. But if they're both playing, Westbrook moves back to being a points league only guy. If one of them is out, then Westbrook starts. Again, if you want to do that, and we don't know how long Brown is going to be out, so that's okay. But it's not a long-term category move. And then the next one is Day'Ron Sharpe, which that feels like the most chasey out of all of this. Sharpe was really good last game. He played well. It was a game they lost by 40 points. And Sharpe is still Nick Claxton's backup. And I think Sharpe and Simmons have some really interesting chemistry. So he's a player to watch, absolutely. But I'm not really sure that's one that I'd be super interested in chasing, to be honest. The most dropped players in fantasy basketball, number one on this list is Vasilije Micic. That's because LaMelo Ball is back. Now, it makes sense. I get this part of it, right? But the Hornets play Thursday, Friday. One of those is a high-volume day. One of them is a low-volume day. LaMelo Ball is coming back off a calf strain. I don't think he plays both games. I think that when we're looking long-term on Micic, yeah, dropping is completely what you do. But what if Ball plays Thursday, sits Friday, then Micic is going to be your out on Friday anyway, and you didn't gain anything because you didn't add anybody who plays Thursday anyway because there's 13 games on, so you didn't actually gain anything from doing it. So it's in a long-term sense, and for some of you, like doing that, you're not scrounging for every single game, which is cool as well. Like if that's what you need to do, it's what you do, and if you don't, you don't. It's all good. But strategically, I think Micic might have been a hold just in terms of schedule stuff only. Shake Milton and Gershon Yabusele. Milton, we tried it out. We said, hey, maybe they get his shot creation with Dennis Schroeder out. He did have some foul trouble in that last game, but that doesn't, to me, that doesn't mean that you needed to, well, let's see what happened, because he didn't enter that game as the first player off the bench. He didn't start. His minutes were low before the foul trouble even kicked in, and it was worth a crack, and you move on. And if it changes, you get him back. And same with Yabusele, who was putting up good numbers. And now he's playing 15 minutes a night. But maybe that goes back up, but that's okay. He's not a high priority guy to hold on to. That's the three most dropped guys from Basketball Monster. On Yahoo, the most dropped player that don't include any of those other names, there is Cason Wallace. Not really sure why. I'm guessing there were people who streamed him in for the NBA Cup final yesterday, thinking that game was going to count. I guess they never watched this show. And then they saw that he didn't start, and then he got moved on from, whatever. But even his last game wasn't super good. I still think that Cason Wallace probably is worth having in 12-team leagues, not points leagues, in category leagues. But if you wanted to drop the Hong Kong mattress, that's okay. Like, his value comes in steals. He was pushing up a little bit of other stuff, but we know the Thunder can move things in different directions. But I still think that keeping Wallace is probably the right move. Jared McCain, the next one, it appears to me that he is out for the season. The Sixers don't really give you just particularly interesting or particularly accurate or particularly clear information. They said he had surgery to repair his meniscus, which is a 6-month injury. But with the Sixers, did they actually mean repair in the medical procedure terminology, or did they mean repair in we're going to fix his knee so he's better? Because that could mean removal. They didn't really specify. Given his age, given the way the sort of season's going, I don't think McCain is back this season, so I would move on. And the other one that was dropped there is Nick Richards. And everything I said about Vasilije Micic applies to Nick Richards. Mark Williams is not going to play both of these games on the back-to-back. Richards was really productive in low minutes, and long-term, he is not a hold, Nick Richards. I do not believe you hold him long-term. But given the way the schedule plays out, I think it's okay to have held on to him, given you might get a 30-minute start on one of those days. And yeah, that especially if that comes on Friday, that's incredibly useful if that is what happens. And I don't know that that's what happens, but it might be. We've got more stuff to talk about, injury replacements, some other names across the fantasy basketball landscape as well, including some droppable guys. Before we get to that, though, today's episode is brought to you by Built Rewards. If you are a renter, you need to sit here and you need to listen up right now, because with Built, you can earn points on rent payments. You know that you're already paying that money anyway. And with things like groceries and travel and all that sort of stuff, you accumulate points. But now you can do it with rent as well. You can redeem your points for flights and for hotel stays and even for future rent payments. They've got over 500 airlines connected to the program, over 700,000 hotels as well. The possibilities are endless. You're already paying that money. with your rent. So why don't you just get something out of it? Get some sort of bonus, get some sort of reward. So start earning points on the rent that you're already paying by going to joinbuilt.com/lockedonnba. That is joinbuilt.com/lockedonnba. Make sure you use that website and that link so that they know that we sent you. Don't wait and start earning rewards today. Today's episode is also brought to you by the Game Time app. Events, tickets, all that sort of stuff through the holiday season. That can be a gift that you can give someone, but you can also, you've got family in town. Let's go watch the local sports team in your particular area. Insert the name of the team there. You get your tickets on Game Time, and that sort of thing is a great way of doing it. But sometimes buying tickets can be a convoluted process. That's where Game Time Picks comes in. It just cuts out the fluff. It makes it so that they only show you the incredible deals that they have instead of having to sort through everything to figure out, is this one good? Is this good? Is it bad? Is it good? What is it? No. Game Time Picks just shows you the good options. They've also got the views from your seat, where you can go in there and you can see exactly what you guys are all going to see when you get to that event. You've got the lowest price guarantee, where Game Time credits you 110% of the difference in the prices as well. So many great things across on Game Time. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create the account, download the app, create the account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. All right, we are here. We're talking waiver wire stuff across the fantasy basketball landscape. The way I look at stuff like must-roster players, it can be hard because obviously I cannot cater to every person's league. If you're in a 30-teamer or a 20-teamer or a 12-teamer or a 14-teamer or a 10-teamer, or you might be sitting in a double onyx, diamond, platinum, titanium league. I don't know. Right? I don't know how good your league is and how everyone's better than everyone else that's ever existed. And you've got to be drafting these players while they're still parts of spermatozoa. I don't know. That might be your league. I can't really cater to that. So when we talk about must roster, I use certain cutoffs in terms of the roster percentage, and I look at in a short-term, 2-week period, which guys are going to look to me to be top 100 guys. And given those cutoffs that I've used all the way through, no one really stood out as being widely available that just needs to be grabbed. The closest was probably Casey Wallace, but that's not really a points league one. He is a category league one. I do think he should be rostered. There were guys like, say, Agogo Badadze, who was, I think, 38% rostered on Yahoo, but he sits at 100% rostered on Basketball Monsters Advanced Number, meaning that I don't think there's going to be many people watching this show where Goga's available in your league. If there is, by the way, he's the guy to go and add. So in terms of like a must roster section here, that's not what I'm not going to go ahead and say, hey, these guys are sort of floating around, go and grab them, because there's no real name that stands out, and I don't want to just, who's a must roster player? Giannis, right? Cool. Right? Don't need to go and say that. It's more these guys that, when I do the must roster segment, like which players may have fallen through the cracks, and at the current stage in time, there's no one that really sits there in that position. But what we will do is we'll talk about the other side of that coin, guys that are rostered in a lot of different spots where I don't think they have to be. And that's what we talk about when we talk about droppable. Do you have to move on from them? Of course you don't. You can, but you don't have to. You can keep them on your roster, but you can move on. If you want to use that to get a games played advantage, to get a hot rising player, a Justin Champagnie, for example, then these guys, if they're on your roster in a standard sort of format, then yeah, you can move on. And the number one on that list is the big fella. I don't know, maybe he's not the big fella. Grade A Dick. We got the update today from the Raptors that Scott Barnes is questionable. All right. Originally they said, around the new year. It's the 19th of December here in Australia. I'm not sure what calendar you're using, but that's not the new year. But apparently Barnesy, who looked like he'd snapped his foot in half, is going to miss like a week. Cool. That's great if you got Scott Barnes. It's terrible news if you're relying on Dick, because we have seen what happens with Grady when there's Barnes and Barrett, or Quickly and Barrett, or whoever. If two of the guys are there, he doesn't do enough. And if Barrett and Barnes are going to be playing in the next game or the game after, well, you don't need Dick. He is an option there when he is the second offensive guy and he can score a lot. You don't have to drop him. Like you can hold on to Dick, absolutely. That's no problem. But you don't need to at this point. And his value, I think it's been relatively clear that when he is the second guy, that is when you get prime Dick. But otherwise, no, move on. I think it's also relatively clear that Bennedict Mathurin is not it. He's not him. He will be better than he currently is, but there was that 10-game, and I know it feels like it was forever, Maybe it wasn't 10 games, but it wasn't that much. He had a really strong run with elite shooting, unbelievably high usage, through the roof rebounding, but now Nembhard is back. Ben Shepherd is returning. Not that Shepherd's necessarily better than Mathurin, although he might be, but he's not better than Mathurin at this point. Then Neesmith will be back. It just doesn't mean you need to hold on to Mathurin, who's just not even remotely at the moment a top 100 player. Bye. Bob Portis I'll always put on this list because Portis' value can be that he is a nice scoring option and a value play if Brook Lopez is out. But we've also seen problems this season that when Giannis hits, doesn't actually change much for Portis. He was on a real hot streak. That fell off a little bit. He's okay to have. He's also okay not to. Rui Hachimura is not okay to have. And if you do keep Rui Hachimura on a 10-team roster or a 12-team roster, well, I'm sorry to tell you, but I think we need an intervention.
Get that garbage out of here.
There's something very wrong with you if you think that Rui Hachimura is worth holding on to, and I'll fight you about it. I will 100% fight you on it. Physically. We'll meet up somewhere. I'll punch a bead off. If you've got one. Anyway, don't hold on to Rui Hachimura. Jaden Ivey is the next one there who has been bad for weeks. One of those ones, one of the perfect illustrations of the guy that breaks out in preseason. We go, okay, JB Bickerstaff is leaning on him a little bit more. But when you dig into it, when you dug into it, you saw that this man's shooting 60% on threes and 70% on twos, and that's not really realistic. The reason why he was an interesting guy to grab in drafts and see where it went is that he was playing and he was starting and his usage was pretty good. You go, okay, that's interesting. Let's see where it goes. But the minutes have come down. He was injured last game. He didn't play and he just can't shoot and he doesn't get assists. He doesn't get defensive stats. So he's gone. See ya. In a points league, hold him. No problem. Category, bye-bye. And the last time I got there is Jonas Valanciunas. They are not using him very much in DC at all. And yeah, he might get traded. That is possible. I think that holding on to a player like Valanciunas, waiting on a trade that may not happen, and if he gets traded, might trade him into another backup role. Like the idea of him going to LA, which everyone seems to think. We know every player gets traded to LA because that's how they work. That's why they've been so successful in every sort of player transaction over the period of time in memoriam. They've always been the best team at acquiring players, that they've been awesome at it. Every move makes sense. But if he goes there, look, what's he playing? 15 minutes a night? How often does him and Anthony Davis play together? Yeah, is Jonas Valanciunas an upgrade over Jackson Hayes and Christian Wood or Christian Koloko? Of course he is. But I don't think he's coming in and go, right, boys, clear out. It's JV time. He's 25 minutes a night. So I don't believe you need to hold on to him. He was, and you can. Like, you absolutely can. If the Wizards decide he's going to go back and play 22 minutes, he can be a 12-9 player, get maybe 0.7 blocks and shoot well. Like, he can do all of that. But it doesn't seem to be moving in that direction. So I'm not going to be super keen on holding on to him in that sort of a setting. You can, of course, but I'm not sure that it's necessary. We're going to come back and talk about some injury replacement guys in a sec. But today's episode is also brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Get ready to tackle all of the NFL action with FanDuel, which is, of course, America's #1 sportsbook. New customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets when you win that first $5 bet. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything that you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. In the middle of the game, you get a hunch. You can check out all the latest stats, view all the live play-by-play stuff. It is all there in that same spot where you'd place your live bet. So go to FanDuel.com to join today. And when you do win your first $5 bet, you'll get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. So FanDuel.com, never waste a hunch and make every moment more. FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL, and don't forget to gamble responsibly. All right, the next part of this waiver wire show, we're going to talk about players who are hot. These guys over the last 2 weeks, which is about a week's worth of normal games, they're top 100 on a per-game basis. So I wanted to talk about how relevant this is. Number one on the list, it's only 2 games for this man, but it is the man on the street, JORDANCLARKSON, and we all know that the Jazz are a little bit of a mess at the moment. They got pumped by about 40 points last game by the Clippers. They seem to be, for whatever reason, mainly because he's not good, but deprioritizing Colin Sexton. Clarkson is very hit or miss, though. He, to me, is the perfect, hey, let's stream and see what happens. Be wary that we might cop a 20% shooting night. But if he's a 27-minute-a-night guy and Sexton's 24, I do probably prefer Clarkson. But I'm not going to be overly excited about doing it. Obi Toppin's also on a really hot run at the moment. If you get in there and get a couple of hot games out of him, by all means do it. But he is Obi Toppin. He requires like 70% shooting, close enough to it, out of character 3-point shooting or out of character defensive numbers. And he needs probably 24 minutes a night, and there's no real guarantee that he does that. He's okay to have. He's obviously been very good. I don't think it's a long-term thing. Royce O'Neal has been a really frustrating player for many years now because there were games where he comes in and go, Royce had 7 assists and 2 steals. That's great. Why did he shoot 10% on twos? Okay. And then, it's a huge opportunity for him. Kevin Durant said, 30% shooting over 7 games. Awesome. And now, then, players are out like Beal and he plays down a position and he shoots 60%. You go, what is going on here? So while Beal is out, Royce has been solid. And Durant's been out a little bit of that time as well, and he's been pretty good. I do not think that Royce O'Neal is anything more than a short-term stream guy. Mo Wagner's on this list. He is cooking at the moment. This is largely due to the last game the Magic played where Wagner was ridiculous. He had huge usage. I think it was like 40 usage or something. Big minutes. What he is a height. He's like Obi Toppin, but good. He's a guy that can score. He can do it efficiently. As a reserve big man, he grabs rebounds. You don't really get anything else out of him, so he's okay to use, but under no circumstance do I look at Mo Wagner as a guaranteed lock top 100 player as we move forward. Kelly Oubre is someone that I'd be grabbing in all spots. Oubre, with the likely absence of Jared McCain rest of season and the absence of good players on the Sixers, Oubre is getting lent into a lot. That sounds dirty. He's getting lent into a lot. There's big minutes that we're getting from self-branded hat legend Nick Nurse. And Oubre is playing better. His 2-point percentage is up this season. He can wax and wane in terms of 3-point shooting. The man's never met an assist that he wants to give. And occasionally he gets some steals. But at the moment, it is just volume that we're getting with Oubre, and that's great. So yeah, he is a guy for now. And the last name on that list is Cason Wallace, who is top 100. It's largely on the basis of the steals. He gets some out-of-position blocks, a couple of assists, couple of threes. It's probably going to be a frustrating experience for you, especially if you're looking for fantasy points or real-life points. That's not what the Hong Kong Matchups provides. But at the moment, I do think he's a 12-team league guy, just on the peripheries of being a must-roster guy. It's close enough where, for some of you, it will make sense, and for others, it won't be as interesting. If you have a look at some injury plays, I'm going to put Lonzo Ball on this list. And what was really interesting is they exceeded the minutes a little bit for Lonzo last time out, and now Josh Giddey is dealing with an ankle problem. It looks like Giddey is not going to miss significant time, which is great. He is doubtful for the next game, but he's dealing with an issue. Zach LaVine, his name is all over the place in trade talks. Again, welcome to the last 3 years. But he's also missed a game with a back issue. So if Lonzo's a 24-minute a night player, which I don't know that he is, but if he is, then yeah, let's see what happens. Of course, if LaVine and Giddey and Dosunmu and who's the other one, White, are all there, it's really difficult for Lonzo to be getting those 24 a night, and they won't need to push him any extra minutes because they don't know if his body can handle that long term. But he's interesting at the moment. Jakob Poeltl's dealing with a groin strain. We don't really, I don't believe, have a timeline on when he's going to be returning from that, but we know that he's going to miss the next game. Olynyk didn't really do much in that last game. We didn't really get anything from him out of that one, but he is dealing with these back issues that started his season slow. He's ramping those minutes up, and we know between him and Bruno Fernando and Johnny Mobo, and Chris Boucher even, he is the best per-minute producer. It's risky because they might just say, we're sitting you at 16 minutes a night, and by the time he's ready to play more minutes, Poeltl returns anyway. But he's at least someone to marginally consider. I've got Cody Martin on this list for a couple of reasons. The Thursday-Friday back-to-back for the Hornets, but also Brandon Miller's ankle injury, the fact that Lonzo might rest a game, and LaMelo might rest a game, and Mark Williams might rest a game. Martin can play 30 minutes, 10 points, 2 threes, 4 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 steals, a block. That is a stereotypical Cody Martin line in 30 minutes. And there are a few things just aligning at the moment that might just push him from a 24-minute guy to a 30-minute guy, especially if Miller does miss time. So that's one to watch. Keon Ellis was awesome last game. They play Thursday, Saturday, Sunday, so you get the nice Sunday game. The other two are high-volume days. And it really benefited him last game that both Kevin Huerter and Keegan Murray were out. And if Huerter is back, then he's probably not going to be anything more than a scheduled stream player. But while Huerter is out dealing with an AC shoulder injury, which might be a week, might be 2 weeks, might be 3 weeks, I don't know. Alice is okay to have when you're searching for those defensive stats. Longer term, though, I don't really see it. There are too many other names and players around in that mix. But for now, yeah, that is a clear injury play. And the same goes with BJ Boston. Now, I'm not looking at BJ as a must roster 12-team league player, but while Ingram and Hawkins and Zion are all out, He's getting like 26, 27 minutes off the bench. He's scoring well. He doesn't do really much else apart from score, so bear that in mind. I'll put him in a similar zone to like a Jordan Clarkson type of a player where it can be iffy and he can have a real destructive shooting night. But while those guys are out, they're giving him some more minutes. Just watch what happens if Hawkins is back or if Alvarado returns and what ends up happening there with BJ. Maybe it's just not as useful of a stream as what it has been in the past. Got 6 other names I want to talk about, which I will do right now. And number 1 on this list is Drew Smith. He had 6 steals last game for the Miami Heat, which is obviously an unrealistic number. But what is, I'd say realistic, but I don't know how realistic it is, but the fact that he is getting prioritized over Josh Richardson, well, he's actually out, over Alec Burks, over Duncan Robinson, over Triple H, Jaime Jaquez Jr., they are going with Drew Smith, even over Terry Rozier at times. Now, Smith is probably just going to be a hit some threes and get some steals sort of a player, but that's at least interesting. I'm going to put Scoot Henderson on this list. Now, when I put other names here, does that mean we've got to add Scoot? No, the opposite. He looks terrible. And could he be better if he wasn't playing for the worst coach in the NBA and be an organization that I'm not really sure they know exactly what they're doing at the moment? That's all possible. I am very fearful of 2 things. Either Scoot isn't good, because let's be clear, he is not good at the moment. Whether Scoot will never be good, I'm worried about that. But I'm also worried did the organization actually ruin him? Because he's shown some flashes. I thought his passing is way better this season. I thought some of his offensive stuff is better, but they've just said, no, we'd rather play Delano Banton. You can play 18 a night, while Jeremy Grant goes out there and grabs 3 rebounds and just generally looks terrible. Not that they play the same position, but it's a prioritization across the whole organization. So, Scoot looks bad. I don't know whether that's a long-term thing. He might just end up being absolutely a terrible bust. It might be him, might be the organization, might be both. But I know at the moment, we don't have to roster him. You can also throw his teammate on there, Shaedon Sharpe. I don't think you need to hold on to him. I know people will disagree with that. I don't know what you're seeing that you think is good about Shaedon Sharpe. He's going to need multiple players being out. He also does nothing apart from score. The efficiency is down, and I think that'll improve. But he doesn't do anything else. I think also there's a real chance he is not good either. Juice McBride's on this list, not to add, to drop. Because we play probabilities, we try things out, and the thing with me was if McBride plays 26 minutes a night, that's holdable in 12s, because if you get an injury, he plays 40. But now he's playing 20 a night, so that's not holdable. You will rush to grab him if someone gets hurt, but it's not holdable for now. I'm going to throw Dalton Connect on this list as just a name to discuss because, you know, why did all those 16 other teams let him slide to pick 17? I'll never know. Also, he's also playing 17 minutes a night over the last week or so on the Lakers. Can't hit shots at the moment, and unless he's getting big minutes, big volume, big usage with big percentages, he's not anywhere close to a 10 or 12 team league player, so absolutely get him jacked out of here.
Get that garbage out of here.
I put Chris Middleton on the list because I've seen that people dropped him. They dropped him because he missed the NBA Cup game yesterday? Maybe? I don't know. Yeah, it's been rocky from Chris Middleton, absolutely. I don't think I would have dropped him. If someone added him, I would go back and... If someone dropped him, I would go and add him. Yeah, it probably will be a slow ramp up. His assist rate is through the roof at the moment. There's some weird stuff with his game overall, and he's very clearly not the player that he was. But I wouldn't have made a move to drop him. In fact, the fact that he missed that NBA Cup game is actually good for you in fantasy because it gives him an IL eligibility, or depending on the IL plus, depending on what system you're using, you got an ability to actually just put him into that injured slot and then get someone else in. The last name on this list is Chris Dunn. Derek Jones Jr. appears to be ahead of schedule in his return. Still no Kawhi, still no Terrence Mann. But Dunn is he's been dealing with this illness, but he's just doing little bits and pieces, getting you those steals, getting the block, the occasional 4 or 5 assist game. He's not a must-roster guy. If he was playing 29 a night, I would say he is, but he's not. He plays 24 to 25, but it's enough to consider when the schedule makes sense and when you're looking for those particular stats. He's just a name, again, he's available like everywhere, Chris Dunn. So, like, if you're in 14s and 16s, like, you should be definitely grabbing Chris Dunn. And in 12s, there is viability of it, depending on how your squad looks. And that is a waiver wire show. Don't forget, the waiver wire show is done, but that doesn't mean that your job here is done because you have got to avoid thumbing up this video, and I appreciate you guys avoiding that. That's awesome. Yeah, we'll be back with a preview of Thursday's 13 game days, and then tomorrow, of course, there'll be a big recap show happening, as well as all your standard fare back in action. In the meantime, enjoy the day off from NBA basketball. Don't be too down on it. Just focus on something else. Do something else for the day. Reflect. Cook dinner. Go out. Have a drink. Knock back some whiskeys. Whatever it is you need to do. Be good to yourself. Be kind to yourself. Acknowledge the good things. And let's all work to be better. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.